Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you both for being here. As a 10-year resident of Alaska who did some recreational mining, this is, I can equate to what you're going through, but question for either one of you, Mr. Secretary or Mr. Scheeler. In the course of your investigation, did you determine whether EPA employees were using private email accounts to discuss official EPA business with outside groups opposed to your mine?
The answer is yes. There were, and we've documented that in the report, there were a number of occasions when private emails were set up to conduct business, which violates actually EPA's own rules in the aspect that those private conversations or communications need to be filed with EPA.
What kind of information was included in those emails?
Well, that's, I've indicated information that's in the email file in those documents there, but I want to get to this point. There was a case of Mr. North, Phil North, who was very instrumental in recommending a process, a 404C process. His computer crashed. Not to be unexpected, it happens. His computer was not backed up. And as a result of that, about a year or plus years worth of correspondence was lost. Now, the best person to explain this, of course, is Mr. North. We tried to make contact with him. I know this committee or Congress has tried to make contact with him. The latest information I have is that he retired from his position in Alaska, then went on a sailing trip around much of the world. I first tried to find if he was living in New Zealand, but now I'm told he's living in Australia, and has refused to respond to requests to meet with him, talk with him. And as a matter of fact, he is under subpoena now for a trial taking place in Alaska on November 12th. So I think he would be the best person to say, what was in that? I don't know. It might be totally benign. I mean, this is the issue. It might be perfectly legitimate what they were communicating. I don't have any way of knowing that. I don't want to prejudge it. But there were missing emails and
these were personal, using personal email accounts?
Outside of the official government.
Do you know why they would use personal?
You would have to ask Mr. North, and you would have to ask others who had these exchanges with, and they would go to the administrator as well.
Yeah. Mr. Scheeler?
Just to provide one example. In the summer of 2010, a number of area native tribes filed a petition with the EPA asking them to invoke or commence a Section 404C process. In the months that preceded the filing of that petition, the attorney for the tribes sent to Mr. North, who was the principal EPA liaison with the tribes, drafts of that petition along with other documents which had been labeled, apparently by the Counsel for the tribes, attorney-client privileged. So drafts were exchanged between the EPA representative and between the tribes in the months prior to the actual filing of the petition. Now, that petition was consequential because EPA used that petition, said they were responding to that petition as their basis for deciding to ultimately proceed with the BBWA, the Bristol Bay Watershed Assessment, which in turn ultimately triggered the 404C proceedings.
Make sure I understand what you're saying here. Mr. North, who was an employee of the EPA, correct?
Yes, sir.
You're saying he used a personal email account, drafted a letter for the native corporation or agency for them to use as a document, as a petition. Is that, am I getting it?
No, not exactly. That's not, what I'm saying is a draft of the petition and related materials were sent by the lawyer for the tribes to Mr. North, and then ultimately
to his personal email.
To his personal email. Ultimately, what we see filed in June is the petition. It is different in some respects from the draft that was sent earlier. We do not have, we're not sure if we have all the email correspondence, so we do not know whether Mr. North provided comments or any of the changes were due to his input or otherwise, but we did find it remarkable, and we did remark upon it, the fact that a draft petition was being sent to the EPA along with attorney-client privilege documents in the months preceding the filing of that petition.
I find it remarkable, too. One last question, Mr. Secretary, being in government before. Is this appropriate to use private? It seems to be a trend that we're seeing now using private email accounts. Is this, in your opinion, professional opinion, an appropriate way to conduct government business?
In my opinion, no. I think if you're going to communicate, you have to do it using government property and government channels. And there may be an occasion where someone gets a call or someone gets an email that is of a business purpose, but under EPA's own regulations, that should be immediately filed with the EPA so that the public can then see whether or not a public issue is being discussed privately without disclosure.
I guess
So I think as a basic rule is don't do it, but if there are extraordinary circumstances that require it, that something happens in terms you have to get in touch with a higher level official, just make sure it's fully filed with the agency.
But let's just hypothetically, and I know I'm running out of time here, Mr. Chairman, but hypothetically, if I wanted to get around FOIA, I could use a private email account to try to do that.
You could.
Okay. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.